welcome to BackStage Takoma. We're here chatting with artists for our April event series, the We Are Takoma series. I'm here with Jacqueline Akhmedova from the Akhmedova Ballet Academy. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Doing good. Excited to chat with you today. First off, why don't you tell us what people can expect from the April 25th show, your students coming in to perform for us.
Yes, and thank you for inviting us. We're all very excited, students included. We will show excerpts from many famous ballets like Don Quixote and Giselle and Sleeping Beauty. And on top of that, we will show masterpieces from they are especially made for your performance, contemporary pieces and character pieces. So that will be the show.
Can you tell us a little more about the contemporary and character pieces? And they're original pieces, right?
The original pieces, some are done, choreographed by me, some are choreographed by my contemporary teacher and other artists. And the character pieces are mainly done by me, and they are mainly Russian dance and Spanish.
Tell me how it is to balance being a mentor to these students and also, producing a top quality show from them.
Well, they don't only have ballet training, they have also contemporary, they have Pilates. All dancers nowadays need a cross training, so it needs to be balanced out. But they probably have at least 3 hours of ballet training, which they need because they all want to graduate and they want to become professional dancers in world ballet companies. And I have several graduates from 2 years ago, which are now overseas and in big companies in America. So I have to balance their emotions, their technique, but they all do really good because they have a big goal and a discipline.
Tell me then a little bit about your discipline and what style you teach these girls in.
They are trained in the Vaganova system. It's a Russian system which combines the French and the Italian system together. And dancers like Baryshnikov and Nureyev, Makarova, Osipova, these are all trained in this system. It's an 8-year training program. It can be done in 6 years, and that's what they are doing, because mainly all of them come to me when they're 12, 13, so then I give them 6 years until they graduate.
Tell me, is there anything that's like maybe on the cutting edge in the ballet world that you're trying to implement in your teaching as well, or is it more sticking to these like more classical rudiments of this style?
The foundation is classical, because if you have a good foundation, you can really pretty much dance anything you want. Oh. Yes, but they have a very, very good contemporary teacher, and they have to know this because all companies expect this from you, and we're not anymore like only classical. And so they have contemporary, they have Pilates, which is very, very important for them, and character, which gives coordination for the dancer.
Tell me what the difference is maybe between putting on, I know you guys put on the Nutcracker this past winter, so doing a more typical narrative dance like that, where it's one story throughout and then a medley like this, what's the difference when you're viewing that type of thing and when you're teaching it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, typically I think audience like stories. They do. And at Christmas time, I think it's the perfect thing to do. So that's what we did. Around Christmas, we did that. And obviously also other times. But it's also good to see, for the students, it's very important to dance a variety of things. And you cannot really include in a Nutcracker the contemporary. So I want them to have a well-rounded education. So that's why I think like mixed evenings are really good for them, because they work towards all that. They have to be very flexible. And it's a big challenge for them, but it's also very, very beneficial. So the audience and for the audience, I think it's interesting too. And it doesn't mean that there is not a little story in any piece you do. Even if a little variation, there is a story to it. Even if it's just the joy of dance or the sadness of what you're expressing. Yeah.
Why you gravitated toward ballet instead of jazz dance or tap or something like that?
Well, when my mother put me into ballet, I was 5 years old. And I didn't really know anything, but she put me into ballet. And that's the only thing I did really for a long time. The only other thing I did was Spanish dance character. And so that's how I grew up, and it was all around me. And that's how I was trained, and that's what I actually love most.
What about your experiences as, you know, a kid from the time you're 5, learning all these dances? How do you bring in your personal experiences when teaching these young women?
Well, obviously times changed a little bit from when I grew up, but I'm telling them stories and I'm telling them my experience. I'm giving them my experiences to educate them and to help them in their profession, especially I think in the time when they're graduates. Last year, the last 2 years, it's very important. It's not only just go out there and dance. It's mentally really hard. The competition is very big. There are so many dancers. In my time, there were not so many. So now it's really hard even to get a job. So
right.
I help them with that too. They learn from me also how to write a resume and how to prepare for it. It's not only the ballet part of it, the dancing part of it.
So you teach them a little bit about the business side of things and
exactly. They need to do their own cover letter. They need to do their portfolio. They learn also ballet history.
Lastly, you could tell us a little bit about the competition that these girls are in and how they, you know, you guys tour around. You do different competitions. What's that like?
Yeah, we just went to Austin and we won the silver and the bronze medal there. So we qualified for the finals in New York, which we will be attending in April, just a week before we come here to do the show. And there it was 500 dancers in Austin. There it will be 5,000 in New York we're competing against.
Wow.
So it's very exciting for them, and it's important for them to see, because they come from Europe, they come from Russia, they come from Asia, they come from all over the place, those dancers. Mm-hmm. So it will be very exciting for them and important.
This has been a great little preview then for the April 25th show. You guys are going to be dancing at 7:30. So thank you so much, Jacqueline.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so up next, we are going to be interviewing Emily Cruz from the Footworks Dance Ensemble, so stay tuned.
Still, Jen, it's your mom. And where are you? The power's off. I need you.
It is important to connect with neighbors, particularly for seniors who live alone.
Mrs. Sanders, how are you?
It's dark in here.
We brought some food for you.
Oh, that's so nice.
Kurt and I were worried about you.
Befriend your neighbor before an emergency occurs. A message from the Takoma Park Emergency Preparedness Committee.
You ever think about buying a bigger place?
Just waiting for a visit from the credit fairy.
There is no credit fairy.
How else will I get a better credit score?
Look, you keep your credit card balances low and only open a new card if you really need it.
No fairy?
There's no magic to improving your credit, but there's help, and it's free. Go to creditfairy.org.
I'm here talking with Emily Cruz, who's the co-director of Footworks Percussive Dance Ensemble. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
The show is going to be April 11th at 3 o'clock here in the auditorium. So why don't you just first tell us what people should expect to see when they come?
Sure. Footworks does a mix of percussive dance styles. So when I say that, it's like all kinds of dance that make noise with the feet. So we have tap dance, for example, clogging, which is an American style that kind of has its basis in, or has its origins way back in like Irish dance and Scottish dance and what happened when it came here to the States. So that's American clogging. And then we do a little French-Canadian clogging, some boot dance from South Africa, and just kind of a mix of things. And it's very good for all ages. And this particular performance will have a lot of good things for kids.
Is there any interactivity?
There is. We love to get the audience involved. So we'll get them making some rhythm with us, and we often sing songs together. So we have a lot of fun.
So how do all of these different styles that seem to be more like folk-based styles make one cohesive show? Is it in one section there'll be different styles mixed throughout, or are there different segments of the different styles of dance?
It's kind of a review. So we do just a blast of different things from the Americas first. So we'll start off our show with clogging because that's how our company originated, and that's kind of home base for us. And then we do a little tap dancing, which is kind of an old style of tap dancing, coming from the old hoofers like Levon Robinson. And then we go into French Canadian, so up into Canada for some stuff. And then we'll kind of break into little smaller segments where we visit South Africa, and then we do some rhythm that is really just kind of our own creation, and kind of banging on some trash, for instance, and get the audience involved in learning how to do a little ham bone. So yeah, it's a real mix and kind of overview of percussive dance.
So what about these styles of dance speak to you? I know you've been co-director for more than 10 years, so you must have a favorite or something that really keeps you coming back to these styles.
Absolutely. Well, I really love all of it. I grew up doing some tap dance and did that professionally a little bit in my 20s, and then found out about Footworks having an audition for a show back in 2000. So I said, well, I know they do a mix of things, and tap dance is one of them, and so I'll just go try. And I just fell in love with clogging, and the company has been really good about teaching all these various styles, because most people haven't been trained in all these different things when they come to the company. So they teach us, and clogging, American style clogging in particular, is just really fun and just brings so much joy to me to do it as a dancer, and hopefully to the audience. That's our plan.
Do you guys wear like actual wooden clogs? What do you wear to do clogging?
Sometimes we do. When we do English clogging, that is a shoe that has a wooden bottom on it, and so it makes a particular sound. When we do American style clogging and tap dance, we actually just wear tap dance shoes.
So tell me how the music and the dance sort of play off each other and work to form one show.
Sure. Well, we're blessed to have wonderful musicians in our midst, and I believe for this performance it'll be John Glick, who has been fiddling with us for close to 20 years. And he's renowned in the bluegrass scene, but he's really a versatile fiddle player and can play all kinds of styles. So he's able to, just kind of meld with us in whatever style that we're doing. And one thing to note is when we do American clogging, we're usually dancing to old time music, which is kind of like a precursor to bluegrass music. And so that music, the old time music, kind of mirrors the clogging and the flat footing styles that mixed into the mountains when all the immigrants from England, Ireland, Scotland came into the Appalachian Mountains and started to develop their own music and their own dance styles. And so they kind of grew up together, the old time music and the flat footing, and then bluegrass and clogging has a similar mirror too, although we don't often dance to bluegrass music because those guys like to play really fast.
Are there any common threads throughout the different styles? I know one is from Africa, you have Celtic dancing or whatever you would call it. Are there any patterns that you would see in the different styles that unify them? Well,
certainly they have things in common. I think of them as kind of cousins because if you look at the feet, you'll see steps that are almost the same, but in terms of the way you perform them, there's different accents, in the rhythm, and there might be a different place where you're placing your body. So you might be a little bit more up on your toes to do French Canadian step dance. You're going to be really down and into your heels for Appalachian clogging. A little bit in between for American tap dance. So they do have certainly things in common, and they're roots and branches of the same tree, honestly. So they're definitely cousins.
There a particular style? You said that you fell in love with everything when you came, but why not for you personally? We just spoke to someone who's a ballet dancer. Why not ballet or more traditional styles like that have a little more structure, I guess you would say?
Well, for me personally, I did grow up doing ballet, and I think that I loved it, but I think that I was never really the right body type for that. So this is kind of a perfect company for me because we can be any shape, size, age to do this kind of dancing. And this company in particular, we focus on the percussive dance style, so we'll leave the ballet to the professionals.
thank you for coming to chat with us. This was excellent. And we're going to be right back. Stay tuned. We're going to talk to Mayor Bruce Williams and Diana Cohn. Welcome back. We're here at BackStage Takoma. We're talking with Mayor Bruce Williams and Diana Cohn from the Takoma Historic Society, and they're going to tell us about the 125th anniversary celebration of Takoma Park. All right, guys, so why don't you just tell me a little bit about the night of April 18th and what's going to be happening at the anniversary celebration?
First, the City of Takoma Park, I think the legislation that passed to make us a municipality was April 5th, April 3rd, 1890. And so we wanted to make sure that we honor and celebrate 125 years. You know, there was a 100th celebration 25 years ago, but it's always good to pause and look back a little bit, see where you came from and where you're going, and honor those who've brought you there.
I heard murmurs of cake and people making speeches, maybe. Can you just give us an outline of what we can expect, people who are coming?
One of the things we wanted to do is put a little bit of context to this. So Historic Takoma, I will do a sort of illustrated tour of the last 125 years. And the city and Mayor Bruce have invited all the current and past council members and mayors to attend and be at a reception beforehand. Is there a reception beforehand?
Yes, reception beforehand, and then the program.
And cake, of course. You can't celebrate an anniversary without cake, so we'll go ahead and do that.
We've come, far, 125 years since the borders were drawn up, right? So, I mean, it may seem obvious, but why don't you guys just tell us why this is so momentous for the community, and maybe why it's worth celebrating 125 years instead of waiting for that next, centennial for 200 type thing.
I'd start by saying I think that in many times people in general, but maybe Takoma Park more particularly, pay attention to maybe some of the more recent history and just kind of assume that, gee, anything that happened before then didn't really have any influence on who we are and why we're here. And so it's always good to go back and look at some of that history that tends to get ignored. And so this is an opportunity to do that. And if you wait from a 100th anniversary to a 200th anniversary, you're missing many generations of people who will never have the opportunity to kind of look and see why we're here.
We did this in 1990, and it's now 2015, and there's a whole new set of people in town, young families, and they weren't here in 1990. So this is an opportunity to help them understand a lot of the how we came to be. And Takoma Park has a certain reputation, some of it deserves, some of it not, and the things that have happened in the past have contributed to that.
Maybe we could talk about Sam Abbott now and the commemorative plaque that's going in on the 14th. Just give us a little gist of that.
This building is named for Sam Abbott. In many ways, he was kind of the person who gets the most credit for kind of changing Takoma Park in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s, and just kind of initiating an activist spirit that is following through to today. And this is a plaque that people who wanted to honor him spent years coming up with what the plaque would be, where it could go, what it would say, and it's going to be a bronze plaque, and it's going to be mounted out at just inside the front door of the building, and everybody's glad that we're finally having an opportunity to put that up, and so that'll be one of the kickoff events to the celebration will be to put that up and unveil it.
Something I wanted to ask you guys is if you had a favorite memory in Takoma Park personally, or a favorite moment in Takoma Park history that you'd want to share with us.
I'm remembering when I first arrived in Takoma Park, we were staying with friends in one of the group houses on the DC on the Tacoma, DC side actually, and we went to a folk festival at the middle school, and there were tables with the community rallying to save the school from being closed. And we walked around, heard the music, looked at all of the activities and various groups, and thought, this would be a fun place to live. Lo and behold, we're now part of the groups that lobby at the folk festival, so come full circle.
And one I think of as more recent, when there was the initiative to extend the right to vote in city elections to 16 and 17-year-olds. And at first I was unconvinced that this was a good way to go, but I had the realization that there was a very good reason to support this, and that was that when people start to vote at age 18, they tend to have already left home. Maybe they're off at school, they're working somewhere, they can live in a different community than they grew up in. And so there's not that built-in understanding of their community and their family being there to support them in doing something like voting. If you start at 16, you're much more likely to still be at home, going to high school, and you may be versed in the issues. Your friends are there. You can understand the context that you're going to be voting in, know some of the people, and it gets you started on a path to a lifetime of voting and being involved in your community. So I think it's really helpful that way. So I think of that as a very quintessential Takoma Park moment to make sure that our kids get involved early and often.
The kickoff on April 18 is only the first of a whole series of events. In the same way that they did the celebration in 1990, we're listing every event that normally happens in Takoma Park as sort of a sampler of what Takoma Park is all about. So the art hop and the Friends of Sligo Creek sweep and all of the various events through the Jazz Festival and the Folk Festival are really part of the 125th celebration. So look for the logo and come out and celebrate.
That's really excellent. We're looking forward to all that. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to chat with us. And yeah, we'll be right back. We're going to talk to Bodden Sandstrom about the film Radical Harmonies that's screening here, so stay tuned.
Introducing a breakthrough in time management technology. A whole new day of the week. It's called Someday. Ingenious. Perhaps someday you are going to go skydiving. Enter a hot dog eating contest. Maybe ride a mechanical bull. Now it's on the calendar. You may want to retire someday. Ready for that? You'll really want this. A My Social Security account at socialsecurity.gov. You can estimate your future benefits, plan for your retirement, and how to save for it. If you already receive benefits, you can manage them online. Millions of people already have a My Social Security account. In fact, someone opens one about every 6 seconds. Get yours today, because someday is here at socialsecurity.gov.
Hi and welcome back. We're here at BackStage Takoma and we're talking with Bodden Sandstrom about her film Radical Harmonies that she co-produced and is going to screen here on April 8th in the Community Center. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the film for people who haven't seen it and also how you came to be involved with it?
Radical Harmonies is a documentary about an underground women's music movement that started in the early 70s and is in some ways still continuing. My involvement came about because I had a sound company during that period called Woman Sound here in the Washington, D.C. area, and I did sound for many of the performers and then many of the festivals. So I was one of the ones who lived and breathed the movement, and it changed me and it changed the lives of all the women that were in it. The documentary itself is a combination of archival footage and interviews with many of the women who were part of the movement. And it's not just the musicians. We developed a whole infrastructure within the cultural movement, which included many different companies to promote women's music, to create women's music, it's how, like I as a sound engineer and many of the other women were given the opportunity to hone their skills and to do their work and to become very skilled in doing that. So it was quite a phenomenon. And how I got to do the film was that I was working on my dissertation in ethnomusicology at the University of Maryland. And actually, I decided to write my dissertation on the Michigan Women's Music Festival, which was one of the biggest festivals in the movement. And I realized that very little of this amazing phenomena had been documented or talked about or discussed. And I was talking to my friend, one of my very best friends, Dee Mossbacher, who's a filmmaker, about this. And so she actually just said one day, well, let's make a film. And so it was like, that's how it was born. So we decided to do that. And we started on the project in 1998. And we finished it in 2001. So it was quite consuming. And we actually went to the different festivals and filmed women performing at the festivals, but then we interviewed many of the artists and the women who had created the infrastructure. So it's a combination, and there's still photos, all different kinds of archival information.
What it was like for women before this movement got underway in the early 70s, what barriers presented themselves for women who wanted a career in music or in sound?
Yeah, well, but prior to the women's movement, music movement, which it's important to think of the context that it was within the women's rights movement, which has been referred to as the second wave of feminism. And a component of that was cultural feminism, where women were exploring and learning about women in arts, not just in music, but in art, photography. And so it was this unearthing of a lot of energy, and women really wanting to start doing this kind of work for themselves again, and to speak for women and to have a voice. And prior to this phenomenon in women's rights, many of the women in music were, for example, in girl groups, and the girl groups were singing fabulous groups. But we were singing mostly music that was composed via some of the music factories in New York City, the Brill Building, and in LA, and mostly men were writing the music and were creating who they were, their image and that kind of thing. And then there were other women who were singing as folk singers and had a wonderful voice, but weren't necessarily writing their own music. Some were, some weren't. And many women weren't playing instruments, for example, or in bands, unless they were kind of girl group type bands that were kind of put down in a way, in a little bit of a way. So the women, when we created the Women's Cultural Network, women started to learn how to play different instruments if they wanted to, create bands, and then they created their own spaces where they could perform and perform the way that they wanted, and to write the kinds of songs that they wanted to write. And the music is thought of as women-identified music, and that's kind of how one would distinguish it from women's music in a way, and so that it's music written by women, for women, and about women. Which is one of the major ways you could think of the difference.
Maybe you could highlight a couple of the people who were at the forefront of this movement, maybe who broke down some of those barriers, and who are featured in the film.
Well, it was a cast of thousands, and so on a certain level, we don't like to, really pull out people because there were so many women involved, and it was an opportunity for women who weren't that well known to become known and to get recorded. And some of the highlights of the movement was when Olivia Records was created, which was in 1975, and it recorded one of the first albums recorded by women, and the performer was a woman, and she wrote all her own music, which was Chris Williamson. And this breakthrough album was Changer and the Changed. And she actually came here before Olivia even started and sang And actually I did her sound when she first came here. And the Change in the Change became kind of like one of the anthems of the movement, the type of music that it was very different, very spiritual, had a lesbian element to it, and was just very unique. But she did help get Olivia off the ground. And other artists that people around here might know that became very popular and were much loved was, for example, like Sweet Honey in the Rock, which is a local a cappella women's group that sings everywhere and everyone loves here. And Dr. Bernice Johnson Reagan's daughter, Toshi Reagan, she's in it. Other ones that are quite well known is Holly Near, who's an activist and a folk singer. But there's just so many, it's almost impossible to name them all.
Thank you so much, Bowden, for being here, and it was great to get a little preview of the movie before it screens. You can catch the screening on April 8th, and that concludes our BackStage Takoma for the We Are Takoma series April event. So thank you so much, and catch us next month.